Have you ever woken up in the middle of the night with your heart pounding? Your mind racing through worst-case scenarios? A financial crisis, a failing relationship, a rumor at work, or just the overwhelming pressure of modern existence? Your chest feels tight. Your breathing becomes shallow. You feel a desperate need to fix everything right now, but you are completely paralyzed. This is not just stress. This is your nervous system being hijacked. When a crisis hits, your brain's fear center, the amygdala, takes total control. It shuts down your prefrontal cortex, the logical, rational part of your brain, and throws you into survival mode. You become reactive, erratic, and exhausted. Society tells you that if you are not panicking, you do not care. We have romanticized anxiety. We believe that worrying is a form of problem solving. But here is the psychological truth. Reacting emotionally to a crisis does not solve the crisis. It simply makes you a victim of it. Panic is contagious, and it drains the exact cognitive energy you need to survive. So, how do you break this cycle? How do you maintain absolute mental clarity when your entire world is falling apart? Over 2,000 years ago, Jesus of Nazareth provided the ultimate blueprint for nervous system regulation and emotional sovereignty. It is a moment so profound that it transcends theology and becomes a masterclass in psychological dominance. Today, we are going to decode the storm principle. To understand this, we have to look at the psychological state of the people around him. In the Gospel of Mark, chapter 4, Jesus and his disciples are crossing the Sea of Galilee in a small boat. Suddenly, a massive, violent storm erupts. This was not a minor weather event. The waves were breaking over the boat, and it was quickly filling with water. The disciples were not amateurs. Many of them were hardened fishermen who had spent their entire lives on this exact body of water. They knew the sea, and they knew when to be terrified. They recognized that they were entirely out of their depth and that death was an immediate probability. Their reaction was the standard human default: absolute panic. They were screaming, bailing water frantically, and letting the external chaos dictate their internal state. The storm outside had created a storm inside their minds. But where was Jesus? He was in the stern, the back of the boat, asleep on a cushion. Stop and analyze the psychological magnitude of that image. The boat is violently rocking. The wind is deafening. Freezing water is crashing over the sides. Experienced sailors are screaming in terror. And the most powerful man on earth is fast asleep. The disciples wake him up, frantic, and they ask a question born entirely out of anxiety. "Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing?" Notice what they did. Because they were panicking, they interpreted his peace as apathy. This is exactly what anxious people will do to you. When you refuse to join their emotional chaos, they will accuse you of not caring. The ego believes that if you are not suffering with them, you are against them. But Jesus' sleep was not apathy. It was the ultimate demonstration of sovereign control. It was the physical manifestation of a mind entirely untethered from external circumstances. Psychologically, he was operating from a place of supreme emotional regulation. He knew that the external storm had no authority over his internal reality. When he finally woke up, he did not join their panic. He did not grab a bucket. He did not ask how bad the damage was. He simply stood up, looked at the chaos, and spoke directly to it. "Peace, be still." And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. But before he calmed the storm outside the boat, he proved that the storm had no power inside his mind. You cannot command peace in your environment if you are at war within yourself. This is the core of the storm principle. Your external world will always mirror your internal state. If you are chaotic, reactive, and fearful, your decisions will amplify the crisis. But if you can anchor your nervous system, if you can literally or metaphorically sleep through the initial panic, you retain the cognitive power to command the situation. Jesus then turned to his disciples and asked them a piercing psychological question. "Why are you so afraid? Have you still no faith?" He was not just asking about their religious belief. He was challenging their mental framework. Fear is the assumption that the worst possible outcome is guaranteed. It is a misuse of the imagination. Jesus was demanding that they elevate their minds above the immediate, terrifying data of their senses. He was teaching them that true power is not the absence of the storm, but the absolute refusal to let the storm dictate your emotional state. So, how do you apply the storm principle to your life today? How do you regulate your nervous system when a crisis hits your finances, your career, or your family? First, you must master the strategic pause. When disaster strikes, your brain will demand immediate, frantic action. Deny it. Unless you are in literal physical danger, do nothing for the first few minutes. Breathe deeply. Force your heart rate down. By intentionally slowing your physical response, you send a signal to your brain that you are safe, reactivating your logical mind. This is your metaphorical sleep in the stern of the boat. Second, detach from uncontrollable outcomes. The disciples panicked because they were focused on the sinking boat, something they could no longer control. Jesus was at peace because his identity and purpose were not tied to the boat. You will only panic if your sense of worth is anchored to something fragile, like a job, a reputation, or a bank account. You must anchor your identity to eternal principles, to a sovereign mindset that cannot be touched by market crashes or social rejection. When you realize that the core of who you are cannot drown, the storm loses its terrifying grip. Third, recognize the contagion of anxiety and build a boundary against it. In any crisis, the people around you will try to pull you into their panic. They will demand that you match their level of stress. You must become a black hole for their anxiety. Absorb it, let it die within you, and project only calm certainty back. Do not let their emotional storm capsize your mental boat. You must look at the chaos they bring to you and internally declare, "Peace, be still." And finally, understand that power is quiet. Weakness is loud. The wind was howling, the waves were crashing, and the disciples were screaming. But the true authority in that situation was a man resting silently on a cushion. True psychological dominance does not require shouting. It does not require frantic movement. It requires an unshakable knowing of who you are and what you control. The next time a crisis erupts in your life, remember the stern of the boat. Remember the power of rest. Let the world panic. Let the people around you scramble and scream. You will remain centered. You will regulate your nervous system. You will retain your clarity. And when the time is right, you will stand up and command your circumstances with absolute authority. This level of mental mastery is rare. Most people will spend their entire lives as slaves to their environment, constantly tossed around by the waves of circumstance. But you are building a different kind of architecture in your mind. If you are ready to master your internal storm, I want you to go to the comments right now and type, "I control the storm." By doing this, you are drawing a line in the sand. Subscribe to this channel and continue building the ultimate psychological framework. Guard your peace relentlessly. I will see you in the next video.